This game is rated M for mature.
I'm playing a bad Ninja Gaiden game.
Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. Why? Oh, why?
I have nothing else more to say about that. Get started with the review, please.
Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z is a spin-off game based on the universe of the modern reboot series of Ninja Gaiden. Looking at the reboot, it is one of the best reboots in a classic franchise that I have ever played. It followed the same footsteps as Devil May Cry, it had its own gameplay styles not done in other hack-and-slash games, and the series has been very well known for being heavy with trial and error. Team Ninja is like a saint when it comes to their two properties, Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden. When the news broke out that they were working on a new game with the help of Keiji Inafune from both Comcept and Mega Man fame, how could one even resist a collaboration like that? Unfortunately though, we all had the right to resist it, as another developer collaborated with them to make Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z the train wreck of a deformed grandchild, Spark Unlimited. These guys are infamous for the creation of Legendary and Turning Point Fall of Liberty, as they are two of the worst games in the 7th generation of gaming. They even made the atrocious Lost Planet 3, so you know for a fact that their next game, Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z, is going to be horrendous. Just how horrendous is the game, you might ask? Let us get out our ninja swords and slash into this game to find out. Oh god, this game sucks. Since this game is non-canon to the storyline of the reboot Ninja Gaiden series, don't find there being connections to past games in this installment, as everything is completely original. The ninja are considered the most deadly assassins to ever grace Japan, and no one was more fierce and deadly than the renegade shinobi named Yaiba Kamikaze. This man is so deadly that he has taken down even the most fierce opponents he has ever faced. That is until he came face to face with Ryu Hayabusa for the first time. Fighting against the honorable ninja of the Hayabusa clan, Yaiba claims that Ryu is the weakest of all the ninja he fought up until now. But the Dragon Ninja turns the tide by slicing Yaiba in half, thus killing him in the process. His death is only temporary, as he wakes up to find himself alive while being reborn, part flesh and part cybernetics. His revival is all thanks to the efforts of a beautiful and attractive scientist named Miss Monday, an employee working for a mysterious organization known as Forge Industries under the leadership of a corrupted bureaucrat named Del Gonzo. The time of Yaiba's resurrection was not all that great, as a zombie outbreak has begun, and he learns that Ryu Hayabusa has been searching for the source of the infection to prevent it from becoming a worldwide pandemic. Knowing that the whole world is on the brink of becoming a planet of the undead, Yaiba Kamikaze agrees to work alongside Forge Industries to put a stop to the spread of the zombie infection while searching for Ryu to exact his revenge. Since Ninja Gaiden games in the modern era are hardly story-driven, this game is no different. However, it is what you would expect from a storyline that is extremely cliched, because many of the things that go on throughout the plot as well as the predictable plot twists are just an eyesore at every angle. How many revenge stories can we possibly even have that has been done to death? Speaking of which, why are zombies a part of this game? Seriously! We all know the basic gameplay when it comes to the modern series of Ninja Gaiden. You go through levels where you can run, jump, sprint parallel to walls, use the flying bird flip to scale up walls, and hacking your foes to bits and pieces that bleed out flesh and bones. Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z is no different, but you'll be disappointed to know that everything is extremely watered down, as if Spark Unlimited wanted to make the game become nothing but mindless action. You'll be playing as Yaiba Kamikaze, as he must go through 7 missions to help put an end to the viral outbreak, as well as seeking his revenge on those who stand in his way. You could do more than just slicing zombies with just your sword, as you can use your cyborg fist and chain flail to even the odds a bit more. Slashing with just your sword does medium damage, the chain flail has a large attack range but does minimal damage, and his fists pack a huge punch to do heavy damage, despite being very slow. Also, when I meant about this game being watered down, I meant that certain abilities like jumping and using Ninpo are fully absent. It's like going through the gameplay roots of what Onimusha is about, but not having the free will to jump is a huge no-no. But some of you might be asking, hey Double R, they show a jump button on the first level's tutorials, so why is it a big deal? Yes, you are right. There is a jump button in the game, but guess what happens when you use that button? You dash! I'm not kidding, and you heard me right. You dash to avoid taking hits. The only time you ever jump is when you come onto certain spots where you can actually jump between platforms to reach newer ones. Oh, and by the way, that's another thing that this game is littered with. Platforming. It's like how bad the platforming is in the 2004 Ninja Gaiden game, but far worse, as you have to jump, swing, and bounce off various things so that you can reach newer areas. If you miss, you start back either at the beginning or at the last point where it is safe to actually start the jump sequence all over again. And don't even get me started about discussing the poor timing of the jumps, because they are loathsome to the mind. Now, for the sake of fairness and objectivity, there are certain gameplay elements that can be quite enjoyable and very mandatory, such as using secondary weapons like the nunchucks, and the spinal zap that can be very effective in taking down some of the tougher enemies and boss fights. Interestingly enough, there is an elemental triangle on the enemies, as there are 3 hazards in the game that consist of fire, electricity, and acid. Every time you have a certain weapon within that element you can use on another enemy of a different element, you can produce significant effects like using electricity on acidic foes to turn them into crystals, in which you can shatter their corpses for easy kills. Or you can use fire on an electrical enemy to produce a twister of fire and electricity for radial damage to other enemies that are close by. The combinations are pretty impressive if you ever get yourself in a tight pinch. Just be careful, as being hit numerous times by the different elements can have Yaiba-induced temporary concoctions, like rendering the cyborg arm and chain flow useless for a short period of time, because of suffering massive electrical damage. There are certain ways to bypass the temporary effects of the hazards, such as dashing to remove the flames from gradually damaging Yaiba, to using the night vision mode to see enemies when the acid blinds your view. Just take all those into consideration, but be prepared to induce these hazards for quite some time, because you will suffer from them a lot. Everything that goes wrong can go right when you use an ability that copies the Devil Trigger from Devil May Cry to Kratos' Rage in God of War. Kamikaze mode. Yaiba will go into a rage and pretty much obliterate everything within his path, but it is extremely temporary after you gain enough of Yaiba's rage to execute the technique. It's very useful for getting through the really tough parts, but it comes very sparingly, and it doesn't always come within boss fights. After completing each stage, you are given a level up system to obtain newer abilities. Yeah, there are RPG elements in this game, just like the previous Ninja Gaiden games. The only problem is that most of the abilities you purchase between missions are half and half, as some of them are mandatory, while others seem quite useless, as they really don't do anything that helps with your combat skills. Everything in the gameplay seems like it is good on paper, but the flaws in the execution and the fun factor makes the experience fall flat, that it makes everything not that very enjoyable. It is playable, as it isn't broken, but you would think that someone like Spark Unlimited would get things right if what they did with shooters turned out to be a disaster. Unfortunately, they do not. Upon first glance at this unholy creation in the Ninja Gaiden universe, everything within a visual standpoint looks very nice to escape that realistic look that the modern series has been known for. Instead of realistic graphics, everything within the visuals is showcased with cel shading that resembles more of a comic book than a cartoon. Even though the game is still presented in a realistic nature, the game goes for more of an approach of where you have to suspend disbelief, as Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z is a game where it isn't meant to be taken seriously. What I mean is that the narrative and the humor is extremely crude, that it makes the stories within the past games act more like heaven than hell. When talking about the crude humor, there are zombies in the game that vomit out acid, big robotic canines that drag their butts on the metallic floors? What? And showing a glimpse that Miss Monday enjoys necrophilia? What the crap? Okay, I understand about all this and feel that it is fine to suspend disbelief when a game has a somewhat realistic vibe, but there comes a point where that concept, it goes too far. I know that Western media likes to take their things to the extreme with how they portray stories, characters, and even graphic violence, but whatever happened to games that were more down to earth and very enjoyable? It's not to say the same that the modern Ninja Gaiden series isn't heavily graphic, which it is, but there was a balance between consistency, seriousness, and action. Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z doesn't accomplish that, as everything is just plain silly. Fan service is brought to the max, the gore is brought to the extreme, and everything shown within the game, such as the levels, come off being very boring. Okay, now going back to the side of fairness, I will admit that the comic book style cel shading looks very pretty for a 7th generation game, and the character of Yaiba Kamikaze looks very awesome. He reminds me of Mega Man with the cybernetic enhancements that he is equipped with after his revival, and it's no surprise that Keiji Inafune is the one responsible for creating this ninja filled with rage and swiftness. Going back to the game's cheesy nature, I will admit that not everything that deals with the comedy of the undead is a bad thing, as it's actually more of an homage to the surreal humor that was present in George A. Romero's Living Dead series, which I actually like. Seeing a zombie trying to drive a monorail, a zombie grabbing onto Yaiba after its upper half is ripped off, or even seeing the puking zombie breaking the fourth wall with showing the palm of his hand right in front of the camera has me chuckling from time to time. Little tidbits like that, which pay tribute to humor or nods to people as well as their forms of work, is always a treat, and Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z does that in one way or the other. Voice acting for the characters is sort of a mixed bag. Characters like Yaiba Kamikaze actually sound fine, but I'm not really that privy toward the voices of the others like Miss Monday or even Del Gonzo, as games done in Western mediums tend to use more professional voiceovers. It is good to know that Troy Baker and Kate Higgins return as both Ryu Hayabusa and Momiji from the Hayabusa clan, since they are in this game, and I always find their work for the characters very fitting, much like anything they voice in this day and age. Last, but not least, the thing I actually find to be the most interesting is that Grant Kirkhope of Banjo-Kazooie and Perfect Dark fame is the game's main composer of this soundtrack. I really like the guy for his past works, but I think we can all agree that this soundtrack is a hit and miss. There are some good tunes in it, but it feels like a vast majority is uninspired or filled with useless rap songs. Either way, the presentation has its ups and downs from any sector within the category, and some of the things that I liked actually come down as being this game's strongest suits. Other than that, don't expect a single thing within the presentation being on its way for a Game of the Year award, as it should be nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award. For traveling through the land of the undead to the underground labyrinths underneath Soviet Russia, you catch up to Ryu Hayabusa and duke it out in a second match. If you thought that the fight against the Order of No Quarter was a close fight, then the fight between Yaiba and Ryu wins that booby prize. Just kidding, as the fight in Shovel Knight is Academy Award status in my eyes. After a close match between the Super Ninjas, Yaiba's allegiance to Del Gonzo is completely severed when learning that the deranged businessman wants to conquer the world, and he destroys a book which contains information to stop the viral pandemic as a way to neutralize himself between the side of the Hayabusa clan and Del Gonzo. In one last act of free will, Yaiba rips off the control core of his cybernetics to break free, but goes into a coma for 3 weeks, which brings him into a large mobile fortress within the cold Antarctic. Knowing that Del Gonzo is within the fortress, Yaiba fights his way through the many areas and rooms within the giant vehicle toward an area that seems holy with Mayan architecture. Upon entering, Yaiba sees that Del Gonzo has become an ultimate life form that wishes for world domination with the vast spread of the zombie outbreak, and that Yaiba's revenge over Ryu acted as a decoy to ensure that Del Gonzo's plan to become a god would not go untouched. In one final showdown with Forge Industries leader, Yaiba Kamikaze comes out successful with obliterating Del Gonzo's ultimate lifeform, before Miss Monday appears out of nowhere and pops a cap in the angry lunatic. Seeing that the world needs saving, Yaiba and Miss Monday use the cure of the zombie outbreak as a money-making tool for their own conspiracy. After leaving the alternate dimension to try and save the world, Ryu Hayabusa catches a glimpse of them leaving and the mobile fortress falling to its destruction. After the scene plays out, the game just abruptly ends. It could be that there might have been more story planned for the whole experience, or maybe setting things up for a possible sequel, but it makes the whole game feel incomplete. Whether if a sequel comes out is still unknown, but it seems much less likely seeing how bad the reception is for this game. No kidding! If you are looking at this game with hopes that there would be bonus content, you came at the wrong place. This game only has 2 unlockables after you beat the game once. The first is a new costume for Yaiba where he dresses up as a Japanese schoolgirl? Yeah, this is pretty much a Western studio making fun of the trope of fan service with schoolgirls from Japan. But if a man wore those clothes instead. Oddly enough, that costume comes out being pretty funny. One other note is that you might have noticed that Beck from Mighty No. 9 is also shown as a costume for Yaiba. That is true unless you manage to pre-order the game through GameStop before its release on either the PS3 or the Xbox 360. So despite Keiji Inafune providing character designs as well as the creation of Yaiba Kamikaze, you can think of the Beck costume as shameless promotion for the upcoming Mighty No. 9 that is due out for all current and next generation gaming platforms in April 2015. Finally, the last unlockable is called Ninja Gaiden Z. Remember when Out of the Shadows had that arcade mode? Yeah, well this mode is exactly like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't make the experience any better as the controls are far more watered down as all the power-ups you gain from grinding between stages in the main mode don't become available to use when going through this mode. Not to mention, it is far more difficult to go through the whole mode, even on the easiest difficulty. Granted, it goes back for the classic gaming feel from the NES days, but the controls within this mode from the main game makes things even more unbearable. I couldn't even get past the first stage as the whole mode is far more unforgiving than the main game. At least the cutscenes being all pixelated has a nice touch. Other than that, don't get your hopes up for other things as playing through the other modes in the harder difficulties is not going to help anything, except for unlocking harder difficulties that don't really benefit to the whole experience. Unless if you are a masochist and want all the trophies or achievements, that is your problem, as they are hardly worth it. I thought for a fact that collaborations between Eastern and Western developers would be much better and more streamlined, but it looks like that there is much more to be learned as both sides need to iron out their flaws in order to make future projects more enjoyable. The game pretty much suffers what many Western developers tried to do with hack-and-slash games as they mostly become mindless and very repetitive. The game is very boring to look at, the story is very uninspired, the music doesn't really make the count, and the gameplay with the difficulty becomes very frustrating as it doesn't capture the same essence nor polish that the modern day series has become very well known for. If Team Ninja and Comcept were the only companies that worked on the game, I think it would have been a match made in heaven. But why they added Spark Unlimited into their collaboration is extremely questionable. I just hope that the next time they pick a Western developer to work on a Japanese franchise done right, they find the right people more suited for the job. For all they could have done, they could have had Ninja Theory be a part of the project because they have better experience with hack and slash and beat 'em up games. Granted, this game is playable as nothing makes the game broken, but the frustration within the gameplay that seems very shallow will harbor enough rage into anyone that suckers themselves into trying to master the whole game by themselves. It's impossible for anyone to try and play this game with numerous playthroughs, as they would feel much better with playing the other games in both the classic and modern Ninja Gaiden series than ever having to play the worst thing to come out of the franchise since the vanilla version of Ninja Gaiden 3 in early 2012. This game is not even worth the purchase or the rental, as it truly deserves to be skipped. Screw this game, as it can burn in hell. Seriously guys, skip it!
that's all the time we have for Double RPG Reviews this time around, so if you haven't done so already, be sure you rate this video as well as leaving your positive and negative feedback down in the comments. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button underneath that video, as more support from you guys means that more content is coming from me in the future that you won't even find anywhere else. Now, before I end off this review, there's something special that I need to do for you all. This game, I cannot believe that it still exists in this world. You know what it needs? It needs a bloodbath. A bloodbath that I cannot even reproduce. But before I do so, I just want to say, have a happy Halloween. Make sure you kids do some really good tricks and get some really good treats, eat a lot of candy, and make sure that you don't even play a bad game like this. This is Double RPG signing off, and I'll see you next time. As for you, it's fatality time.
Hey everyone, this is Double RPG here, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Double RPG Reviews. This is sort of a follow-up video after my review of TMNT Out of the Shadows. If you want to see me writhe in pain over that game, click on the annotation in the video. If you want to see me talk about a really good game like Mega Man X2, give that annotation a click in the video. Don't think that I am done with bad games, as I will be covering more in the future, but the next one will be something that is really awesome. Until then, this is Double RPG signing off by saying Godspeed and game on, gamers. Catch you next time, good warriors!